Picture yourself walking down a residential street in Charleston, South Carolina in 1905. Every house has a wide front porch, maybe 15 or 20 feet deep. There are rocking chairs, potted ferns, families sitting out after dinner, children running between yards, neighbors calling to each other across the sidewalk. The whole street feels alive, like an outdoor living room that stretches for blocks. Now picture a residential street in Phoenix built in 2015. You see garage doors, rows and rows of garage doors, concrete driveways, maybe a thin decorative column next to the front door that nobody ever uses. The houses did not just lose their porches. It is like they turned their backs on the street entirely. How did America go from porch culture to garage culture in less than a century? To understand what vanished, you need to understand what the porch actually was. Because it wasn't just a piece of architecture, it was an entire social system. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the front porch was the most important room of the American house, and it wasn't even inside. Before air conditioning, the porch was the only comfortable place to sit on a summer evening. Families in Georgia, Mississippi, and Virginia would spend entire evenings outside, because the alternative was suffocating in a closed-up parlor with no ventilation and heavy curtains blocking every window. But cooling was only part of it. The porch was where you met your neighbors, where you watched the street, where you courted. Young men and women in the 1890s didn't swipe right. They sat on the porch while the whole neighborhood watched, which was its own kind of social technology. Parents didn't need to chaperone a date when the entire block could see the front porch from their own porches. And it went deeper than courtship. The porch was built-in surveillance, entertainment, and community infrastructure all at once. News traveled across porches before newspapers could print it. Business deals happened over lemonade. Political arguments played out in rocking chairs. The porch wasn't a feature of the house. It was the social engine of the neighborhood. The architecture reflected this completely. Victorian homes dedicated serious square footage to their porches, wide overhangs, ornate railings, ceiling fans, sometimes 2 full stories of wraparound porch. These weren't afterthoughts or decorative additions. They were the point of the house. Some homes in the American South had porches that were larger than their interior rooms. Walk through neighborhoods like the Garden District in New Orleans or the Fan District in Richmond today, and you can still see it. Those porches were designed for living. They were designed for being seen. So what killed all of that? The obvious answer is the car. But the real answer is more complicated, and it happened in stages that nobody planned. In 1903, there was roughly 1 automobile for every 6,500 Americans. By 1930, there was 1 automobile for every 5 Americans. That explosion happened in less than 30 years, and American homes were not built for it. At first, the car did not threaten the porch at all. Early automobiles were stored in carriage houses at the back of the property, down a narrow alley. The front of the house still belonged to people. Porches still faced the sidewalk. The rhythm of the street was unchanged. But after World War II, everything changed. GI Bill sent millions of returning soldiers into the housing market at the same time. The Federal Housing Administration was backing loans for new construction in the suburbs, and builders like Levitt and Sons figured out how to construct homes fast, cheap, and at scale. Levittown, New York went from empty potato fields to 17,000 homes in 4 years. Those homes needed to be simple, affordable, and efficient. The wide front porch, with its deep overhang and ornamental detail, was an expensive luxury that added thousands to the construction cost. The attached garage facing the street was a practical necessity that buyers demanded. This is where the shift happened. For the first time in American residential history, the garage moved to the front of the house, and the porch shrank to a narrow concrete slab by the front door. It was not an aesthetic choice. It was an economic one. Builders saved money, buyers got cars off the street, and the FHA loan guidelines favored simple, garage-forward designs because they were cheaper to insure and faster to appraise. Levittown was not unique. It became a template. Developers in California, Texas, Florida, and across the Sun Belt copied the formula almost exactly. Thousands of subdivisions went up in the 1950s and the 1960s using the same logic. Small lot, attached garage, minimal porch, maximum interior square footage. The American home turned inward, and it happened so fast that most families did not notice the trade they were making. But the key was not acting alone. Two other technologies landed on American households in the same decade, and together they finished what the automobile started. The first was air conditioning. Window units became affordable for middle-class families in the 1950s, and central air followed in the 1960s and 70s. Overnight, the practical reason for sitting outside disappeared. Why sweat on a porch when you could sit in a cooled living room? For the first time, Americans could make the inside of their homes more comfortable than the outside, and they did exactly that. The second was television. In 1950, about 9% of American households owned a TV set. By 1960, that number was nearly 90%. Television did not just move entertainment indoors, it moved attention indoors. Families that used to watch the street now watch the screen. The evening ritual of sitting outside, waving to neighbors, keeping an eye on the kids playing in the yard, all of that was replaced by a glowing box in the living room. The porch lost its function as a source of stimulation, and once that happened, there was no economic reason for builders to include one. 3 technologies, 3 decades. And the American front porch went from the most important room in the house to a decorative vestige that most new construction does not bother including at all. By the 1980s, a new architectural phenomenon had a name. Urban planners started calling them snout houses. These are homes where the garage juts out in front of the main living space, so the first thing you see from the street is a pair of garage doors and a driveway. The actual entrance is recessed, almost hidden behind the garage wall. Some snout houses have garages that make up 60% of the front facade. Walk through a typical subdivision built after 1990 in places like Mesa, Arizona, or Frisco, Texas, and you'll notice something uncomfortable. There are no people. The streets are wide, the sidewalks are narrow or missing entirely, and every house presents a blank wall of garage doors to the road. It feels empty even when every house is occupied, because the design itself discourages anyone from being visible. This isn't just an aesthetic problem. Jane Jacobs, the urbanist who studied how cities actually function, argued that eyes on the street are what keep neighborhoods safe. When people sit on porches, they naturally watch who comes and goes. They notice strangers. They know the rhythms of the block. Porch culture was passive security, an informal surveillance system that cost nothing and worked constantly. Garage culture eliminated it overnight, and the data supports this. Studies of neighborhood design and crime rates consistently show that streets with front porches and pedestrian activity have lower rates of property crime than streets dominated by garage-forward homes and blank facades. People who can't see their street don't protect it. People who never sit outside do not know who belongs in the neighborhood and who does not. There has been some pushback. The new urbanism movement, which gained traction in the 1990s and the 2000s, specifically tried to bring back porch culture. Planned communities like Seaside, Florida, and Celebration, Florida were designed with front porches mandated in the building codes, narrow streets to slow traffic, and sidewalks wide enough for actual walking. Some cities, including Portland and Austin, even passed zoning rules discouraging snout houses and requiring front entries to face the street. And people who move into these communities consistently report something that sounds almost quaint. They say they know their neighbors. They say they feel safer. They say the neighborhood feels alive in a way they have never experienced in a conventional suburb. But let us be honest, these represent a tiny fraction of new American housing. The vast majority of homes built in the last 30 years follow the same template. Garage in front, porch in back, if there is one at all, and a front door that exists mostly for package delivery. Meanwhile, in Havana, in Lisbon, in Cartagena, and in dozens of cities across the Mediterranean and Latin America, people still sit outside in the evening. They still watch the street. Life still happens at the front of the house. Walk through a neighborhood in Buenos Aires or Seville at 8 o'clock on a summer night, and the sidewalks are full of chairs and conversation. These countries have air conditioning, they have television, they have cars, but they did not let those technologies push them indoors permanently. America is not the norm here. America is the exception. And that's what makes the story worth telling. Because the front porch did not disappear because of some inevitable march of progress. Technology made the porch optional, but culture made it disappear. Americans, collectively and mostly unconsciously, made a series of choices. They chose climate control over fresh air. They chose private entertainment over shared experience. They chose speed and convenience over slowness and connection. Nobody woke up one morning and decided to kill porch culture. But every family that bought a house with a garage for 2 cars instead of a wraparound porch was casting a vote. Every builder who cut the porch to save $4,000 on construction was making a value statement. Every zoning board that approved another cul-de-sac full of snout houses was endorsing a particular vision of how neighbors should relate to each other. Every homeowners association that banned front yard furniture was choosing tidiness over community. Architecture is not just about buildings. It is a physical expression of what a society believes matters. And if you look at the American suburban streetscape, honestly, what it communicates is clear. Privacy matters more than connection. Cars matter more than people. The inside of the home matters more than the space between homes. That's not a criticism, it is an observation. Plenty of Americans genuinely prefer the privacy, the quiet, the control of a well-sealed suburban house. And there is nothing wrong with that preference on its own. But there is something worth noticing when an entire country, within the span of a few decades, collectively redesigns its homes to face away from its neighbors. That is not just architecture. That is a philosophical shift. And most people living inside those homes have never stopped to think about what it means. The next time you walk through a neighborhood, any neighborhood, pay attention to what the houses are saying. Are they facing the street, inviting you to look, to wave, to stop and talk? Or are they facing inward, closed off behind garage doors and privacy fences? Neither answer is wrong. A family in Minneapolis choosing central air over a screened porch is not making a moral failing. And a family in Savannah sitting on their wraparound veranda is not automatically more virtuous. But the choice tells you something about what that family values, about what that neighborhood prioritizes, and about what that culture has decided matters most. The American front porch did not disappear because it stopped being useful. It disappeared because Americans decided other things were more useful. And whether that trade was worth it, well, that might be worth sitting on a porch and thinking about for a while.